this summer.
This is Disclosure Now with Arkheim and Brian Zeng, a show where we expose the truths that are nefariously hidden from humanity. Today's guest was Brian Minnic of Montauk is Strange, who has been documenting the history of the high strangeness of Montauk Point for over 30 years and has just released a book on the subject. Mike Colontonio aka Long Island Bigfoot joined in as well for an absolutely fascinating conversation on the history of Montauk.
Hello, it's Arkheim. I'm here with Brian Sang, and we are speaking about the new book, Montauk is Strange, with Brian Minnic from Montauk is Strange. We also have Mike Colontonio with us, also known as Long Island Bigfoot. And we all met at the Montauk Adventure Tour, which was coincidentally enough. I mean, I think we were literally there like 1 year ago from now around was when we
Yeah.
all met. And now here we are, we're talking about your book, and now I have my book coming out as well. I'm getting
Yep.
my author copies in the mail today. So a lot has happened. And I'm really excited to have you on the show because it's been, I've set ever since I like when I first woke up about Montauk and kind of my experiences and stuff. One of the first kind of YouTube channels I found was yours, and I looked at your videos and stuff, and now here we are, we're talking about your new book, which is incredibly exciting. I unfortunately haven't like read the whole thing, but I've just kind of started and I already have like plenty of
Yeah.
questions just from just barely getting started. So,
Sure thing.
but yeah, there's a lot of raw information, a lot of raw data in there, a lot of, if it's not evidence, it's really incredibly interesting coincidences and stuff like that. So,
Exactly.
welcome to the show. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much, Mike, for informing me about his book coming out and kind of pushing this forward and saying that we got to have him on the show and for being here with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, you're gluing us together, which is cool, man.
Um,
I want to thank you for having me as well. And yeah, since I know it takes time, so these things sometimes like build up and then when the time is right, then things happen. So
You
it's
know,
awesome.
it's been a long time. Like I have my hard copy here. It's 430 pages. Like it's massive. There was no shortcuts taken. Like it, it's amazing. Like I'm not a book reader by any means, but like I keep going into this one. And that's what I like about it is you can kind of open up to any page and just like, oh, like it's just like it's interesting, on so many different levels. And it's just I,
it is.
I think that
Can you go into a little bit, Mike, about how you met Brian and what the whole story is with your you being, you're from Long Island, like your connection to Montauk and finding Brian and everything like that?
yeah, I think he kind of found me on accident. And you know, I I I was I had a Bigfoot encounter here, which is kind of something that wasn't very unexpected, which sent me on this journey of like down this rabbit hole of like what is going on, and then I started to realize like I had been going to Montauk since the 80s, with my mother, and like yeah, I had been to the lighthouse like a dozen times, never even saw Camp Hero somehow, never knew it was there. Nobody ever spoke about it. Like, I mean, it was just this like thing, this blatant thing that was sitting right there that just nobody spoke about. And then I went, and then I went and somebody started to put me onto it when Stranger Things started to come out. And they were like, you have to see this place and like really vibe it out before you watch the show. So I'm like, all right. I'm like, whatever, no big deal. So I went there and I was thoroughly impressed, like with the energy and like everything and like just the way it was. And I couldn't believe it was a state park. I couldn't believe it was right there. Just standing on those bluffs alone. I was like, this place is whacked, man. I'm like, something ain't right here. And mind you, I had no idea about anything, not I had no idea. Nothing, no idea about anything. None of the history, MK Ultra, nothing. I'm just standing there saying, like people are looking at the view and I'm saying no, like something's off, right? So I'm making videos kind of about it and driving through, and that's when Brian kind of came into my comment section and was like, "Oh, damn, like like I'm always there," and like da 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 da, and we started talking, and from there we had met up at another place and kind of started. Him and Danielle met up with me, and we did our Bigfoot thing kind of, and they helped me connect some puzzles that way, and which really kind of opened up my mind, and since then we've just formed this like relationship where like we're like brothers, and we go and do all these different things, and then through Dark Hour Paranormal too, we started doing this annual Montauk thing. And Brian and Neil go out there all the time. They've been doing it forever, like forever. Brian, I think that's amazing. He adds footage from like the '90s even, and like into his channel, which is really cool. And um, he's really like the go-to, as far as I'm concerned, like the go-to guy when it comes to anything out there, and history in general. Everywhere I go with him, he tells me something about where we are, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, how did I not know that? It'll be like, oh, this spot, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, and like he just constantly blows my mind. So it's like rolling around with a tour guide in your own your own backyard, and it's been fun ever since. We've been cool ever since.
Yeah, there's definitely a wealth of information in the book itself, which is
Oh
a
yeah.
testament to what you're saying.
I just bought my copy here on bookbaby.com. I went old school with the paperback version where they got to schlep it or ship it over to me instead of the ebook, which is also readily available, which looks like I know Arkheim might have gotten already.
Yeah, I got the ebook. He's getting the physical copy, and then I know there are people actually asking me because I kind of have been advertising this interview a little bit ahead of time. People already want physical copies, and so that people should know it's not on Amazon, but you can get it on bookbaby.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then just look it up, and there's you're gonna find there is an ebook version on BookBaby, but make sure just double check that it's the hard physical version, not hard, but paperback version, and get yourself a copy of the book. I've got plenty of questions for the interview, and I'm not even a third of the way through yet, so there's a
It's
lot.
that really good, like glossy paper, so it's I've had this thing all over the place, and it's surviving. So it's good. It's as close to a hard copy as you can get.
Yeah, I personally have always liked paperbacks better than hard copies for myself.
I got to ask Mike, being a Bigfoot researcher, and you also work with our friend Jessica Jones, the cryptid huntress. When we were all together last summer on the 2023 Montauk Adventure Tour, there on the grounds of Camp Hero on the east end of Long Island, New York, Montauk area.
Yeah.
And we were standing in that grassy kind of traffic circle area, roundabout, rather, little tiny thing, where the barracks, the rundown barracks are still there, and a couple just bare cement pads as well. Not too far down from the Sage radar station that everyone, knows from the imagery. And we were doing the energy clearing work. And because you're able to see, not everyone is able to necessarily see Bigfoot, right? I can't, Can you describe if you had any visuals while we're doing any of that work? Because I think you and some of the other people were mentioning that. And to me, I've been told I kind of have like a lens cover over my third eye that was put there somehow. And I think you might have that less so.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of. I don't want to say like there's like a key to success, but it's definitely like a vibrational frequency thing, right? Like and a manifesting thing, and it's what I put my whole heart into and everything. And I definitely saw what I would consider an outer circle of along the wood line, of more than just wood line. Could I make out solid figures? No. Could I make out, you know what I mean? It wasn't like I was visualizing necessarily like an army of Sasquatch or elementals, but the there was help, in my opinion. There was definitely help out there.
For context for the viewers who don't know what we're talking about, who maybe just are tuning in for the first time, we went to Montauk Point, and that's where we met. We met Brian in person, and I met Mike in person, and there was a lot of people there, and it was for the anniversary of when the Eldridge, USS Eldridge from the Philadelphia experiment was supposed to reappear. And that's basically when this happened. And we went to the ley line there. There's a ley line there, which there's been a lot of talk about the ley lines and how they need to be healed. And like, like Journey to Truth just did a whole documentary about that had to do with that. And we're coming to the same conclusions, like separately with what we were doing at Montauk. So it's a huge part of like the healing of the earth, just like healing these ley lines, these grid lines of and healing them with light energy and stuff like that. So I think that, like, unbeknownst to us, like, I don't think we were really there to see like the USS Eldridge. Like, I think we are actually there to do that. But that's where we all met, and that's what Brian's talking about for people who are just coming in as blind and just looking into the book. And then the book itself, Montauk is Strange, is just a collection of, because Brian has been Brian Minnic has been you grew up near Montauk, and you would go there a lot, and you have stories, and you have a lot of interesting information, personal accounts. That's kind of what your book is about, and you've also documented all the evidences, like Mike was saying, like you're a bit of a historian, like you're able to talk about a lot of different stuff. So, well, thank you so much for coming to the show. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here. Can you maybe just like just briefly summarize like your path of like what it was to get you to realize what was going on with Montauk on the first place, start questioning it, and what led you on the path to writing this book?
That's a great question. First, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and all of the support. Because it's been hard to promote it thus far, because I took a break after I wrote it, basically. But now this is a good way to start. Really getting it out there, and I couldn't thank you enough for getting it out to so many people that I don't have access to, that I really would like to have this information. You included anybody who wants to use it. And so I'll start with your question, like how did it start for me? Is basically my family would also, like Mike, go out to the Montauk Lighthouse, and it was a thing people would do on Long Island. I also went on those same field trips to the lighthouse, to like the Seg Harbor Whaling Museum, these local places, and they would take kids to the lighthouse, for like a field trip. So we've been there so many times in our early childhoods, probably we can't count. But at some point when our parents started hanging out in the lighthouse parking lot, like cooking, like tailgating, and we'd go to the Montauk Parade. We had bikes, and we went off one year. And like Mike, I didn't know Camp Hero was there at all, and there was a radar, because it's well hidden, even though it's massive. So one time we got lucky, and we were riding our bikes and found the back door of Battery 216, which is a World War II bunker. And there was a hole in the wall big enough for us to fit through. So of course we went in, and we start going through the tunnel with no lights at all, just feeling the walls. And that's when I felt, like this is very interesting place. And my friend stuck his head in the door on the right, and I said, "What's in there?" He said, "There's a potted plant on the table, like an old metal table." I was like, "That's weird, maybe it's a fake plant, I don't know." But then the next room that I passed by, I felt like I kind of saw like a double vision. Like I was reading comics, I have a very vivid imagination. So who knows what this meant, but I saw from two angles, something looking at me, and through its eyes, I saw us walking past the hallway, and it was like really weak and wanted to like, suck our energy kind of. And at the same time, I pictured this reptilian thing that I saw, which is similar to like a certain comic I did have. So maybe it was I think it was an old Vision and the Scarlet Witch comic, actually.
Okay.
I could probably find it, but nevertheless, I forgot about that, and we kept going through this hallway, and there's a big, massive hole in the floor that we had to cross over, and so we only had a little rebar against the wall to like step on. So we went across, you know, we grabbed each other's jackets. It was scary. There was wind blowing up. And so when we got to the other side, we said, let's drop a brick down there, you know, piece of the broken floor into the hole. And it went for like 3 or 4 seconds before it hit water. So there's this massive, like deep underground there. I never forgot that. So years later, and we ended up climbing, you know, keep going in the dark until we came up through a hole out into the sand, on the top of the sand, like right in the sand, on top of the bluff where we all were, where we gathered, like near the bluff cliffs. It was right there. So I've always been looking inside that cliff and checking the old World War II bunker diagrams, the history of the base, to find out what's down there. And that's like a huge mystery, because years later, like, well, I'll get to it later, but later on, I was able to find early internet writings, one by Michelle Gearin, where she described the story of this very same being, like in the same bunker. And it was like a military operation. So I thought that was really strange the way she described it, and coincidence, right? Then later, when I'm doing the military history, I actually found that this bunker was abandoned for like 10 years, but they came there in like 1970, and there was the Navy, the SEALs, and like a special ops team did like a drill in there for a short period with the Air Force under ADTAC, which is like the Air Force Black Berets. So she said she saw men in black berets. So how could she possibly know what was like buried deep in like this military history that I had to dig so deep for? And this woman was just writing her experience on like the very early internet, and she had like hypnotic regression, and then combined with what I thought I imagined, there might be something to that. You know, I really always thought that.
I got to ask Brian and then Arkheim.
Yeah.
Do you think that lines up with maybe after Junior was summoned, and then they were the military officially was like kind of like chased off, and then maybe this is them, that was their operation to reclaim the base?
No, because 1969 is when the base actually was like, it was like so top security and very important. It was NORAD. They had no time to do like anything really in that time except for defend like their mission with the radars and all this stuff. But the 1969, everything closed. And then from that point, this thing ADTAC took over for 13 years until they, or 14 years until they closed it in 81 and 83 are the years people go between when the closure. There's certain documents, but then there's the rumors of the trucks that came in with cement and dump trucks and so on and so forth. So it's hard to say, but basically for all that time, from 69 to 82, it was ADTAC, which works with other branches of the military or foreign militaries, or they have nothing to do with, the base was basically didn't have a main mission in those years. So a lot could have happened in those years. And 1970 was like the first year that stuff would have happened too, as far as using that part of the bunker. But yeah, it's also when they were, supervision was taken away, like the regular military. Now there was a crew on the surface that did regular jobs, and they all swear nothing was happening at that time. But it looks like they moved elsewhere, like they weren't doing things on the surface after that year, because the surface seemed like a facade. Only, I'm not saying their jobs they weren't working hard and doing actual protective jobs. I'm just saying the mission was canceled, and then they remained open, and nobody really could explain it.
Yeah, it's been testified by other Montauk survivors, not myself, because like the timeline of things and all that stuff, I don't really remember all that, but other people have basically said that it got shut down. And man, I'm having like a thing happen where I'm like getting a block and I can't talk. What were we just talking about, you guys?
I think I was supposed to talk about how I got into Montauk, but I veered off the topic.
No, you're fine. I had a brain fart. Like I was in the middle of talking.
Arky, we're also talking about the timing of the base, then when it was like commissioned or decommissioned, and when this weird, this interesting military kind of sounds like almost like a
military operation. I remember what I was gonna say. People have talked about how they closed the top, like they just got rid of, like eventually it was like, why even, because there are portals, and that there's other ways to get in there, like there's underground infrastructure. So what's the point of keeping the top open where people can see the activity and question what's going on and stuff? If you want to really do it in secret, like why even have an entrance on the top? So that's like kind of lines up with what other people say that like have remembered Montauk and have testified to it. And also I want to ask too about the lizard person you saw, because like, I mean, and I mean this with 100% respect. You say like it's due to maybe like an active imagination, but I feel like if that were 100% the case, then maybe you wouldn't put it in the book, right? Like I feel like a part of you, and definitely myself, thinks that there's maybe a little bit more to that than an active imagination. And I'm just kind of curious what if you could describe what that. I know you said that it looked like a creature in a comic that you read, but I've never seen that comic before. Could you maybe describe a little bit what the reptile being that you saw looked like?
Yeah, so that art I took, it was from I think it was Deviant Art somewhere, and I credited that person only because that looked most similar that I could
Oh, so
put
it's
in the
in the
book.
book.
Yeah, yeah, the picture is in, I put it right on top of the recreation of the tunnel that I tried to show the blackness of the hole in the floor, like just how dark the shadows were that we had to cross over, and then the little bit of light coming from somewhere up there through a hole in the ground that we climbed up out of. I kind of made like my own recreation of the scene in a way, as best I could, with Photoshop, but nothing very skillful in that case. It was just to show. But yeah, so what I, like I say, imagined, I did include because it was seemed more than just a coincidence, because especially to what I found later. So with that story by Michelle Gearin, I think it's called Reptilians at Montauk, and you can find it online. Just Google, and it was reposted on different websites like 1,000 times now. But that one tied in, like that just made it seem like a coincidence. But then when I saw documentation about an operation just like, very similar in that year, I thought, okay, it's a string that I want to follow, like leads. Most of the time, I follow each one until it ends, and then combine them. But sometimes I have to change my tune too, like certain things I've looked into that I thought, and then when I found the right, the actual what it was, I had to change my ideas of what it was. But that's something that I experienced in the sense of, in my mind, like a mental picture. So like I didn't see it with my eyes. This is something that I saw two
Yeah,
views, one
but it's
through
really
my eyes and one
interesting
through.
though, because also what people have said about, well, myself and others talked about how they were Draco reptilians there were winged reptilians. There are different kinds of ET that were there, a bunch of different kinds, but and then there was this group of like reptilian mercenaries that were there, and everybody just talked about. I mean, this happened to you a long time ago. So this is before the internet, stuff like that. But now it's
Yeah,
commonly talked about. And like I said, so it's not like you read this somewhere or saw it on the internet. This was before that.
this
But
is
they
in
talk about the reptilians and how they harvest energy, how they harvest loosh, how they steal your energy, and you talk about how I want to steal your energy. So I just
well,
found that really interesting. And while that is in the book, and I'm really glad you included that, another thing that's really fascinating about the book that I think will be really compelling to a lot of what we would call the public or normal people and experiencers and people that are really into this stuff alike is the fact that you have so much evidence kind of lined up and just strange stuff, like strange things you've seen, strange coincidences and stuff like that. I think that's probably one of the most exciting parts about this book. But I wanted to bring that up because I do find that fascinating, because to me, strange little coincidences like that, I mean, they might not be like hardcore evidence to most people, but they more than suggest that there's some sort of bigger picture going on that is connected, right?
yeah, yeah. As far as like the different parts of the book, absolutely. The chapters, basically, I try to include a source for like a lot of the ideas, and then weave the ideas together to make a point, and then weave all the sub chapters together to make a bigger idea. But the adventures there are just straight up what we experienced, and how it was new to us. So like some of those first field reports, we're like seeing everything for the first time.
And I love how you call it adventures, because it really was, it really is kind of like you guys were like the real life Stranger Things kids in a way, like on your bikes, like riding into the Camp Hero, like what's going on in this weird town. Like it is kind of
Yeah,
like that. And it's cool to get like an inside glimpse of that. And I mean, I
that's
think
cool.
it is kind of important for people to realize that Stranger Things is really based on a lot of real life events. And one can only wonder if they got any inspiration from your work, because it's true that the researchers who were looking into Montauk, we all know that. And I know from experience that when I looked into Montauk, if you're looking into the paranormal aspect of it, I mean, you'll find normal stuff like it's a vacation spot, yada yada yada. But if you're looking into that aspect, you're gonna find you. So these people probably do know your story, the writers of Montauk, and they probably do know who you are, Brian. And it's kind of a trip
Maybe.
to think about. Have you ever thought
That
about that? I wouldn't say maybe.
I
I would say it's 90% like it's like 99% like, because like think about it, like they researched it, the show's based on it. You're you're like the Montauk guy. Like there's not that many people
I
doing.
mean, there's definitely I do have a whole like subchapter where like saying of all the places that they did draw from, and you're right, they did draw from everybody. And like I pointed out a few things, like even adding in some of the 80s culture and influence, but I did question, if they saw some of our old videos for sure, because those were kicking around on YouTube for years of us running around the base in the 90s and getting caught and then all over the place, the tunnels at the top of the tower. And so those were floating around, and I know people were familiar with those because I've met people a bunch of them, and they've actually said to me, "Did you see those old videos?" And I'm like, "Yeah, those are my videos." So I don't know if they always connect, who it is. In fact, when I started the channel, nobody really knew my name, and so like anything I did on TV wasn't connected to anything with this book or with the channel. So now, hopefully, they're together on the same paper. Not that it matters. It's in
Well,
that
I
sense.
think it matters to help people be able to find you and talk to you.
That's true.
Well,
Yes, it
and
does
you
that.
guys want to ask, at Contact in the Desert this year, I met Gino Gentili, the executive producer of the Y Files, and he
Oh,
introduced me to his friend Jen, who apparently is on the writing team for Stranger Things. I mean, they just did their 5th season, which I guess so now it's over. But
yep.
I can always see, we can try to ask if they came across any of your work.
Oh, they
on
have me in one of the episodes actually. The Y Files. Yeah, they in the Montauk episode. Yeah,
Good, good.
they use some footage and
Yeah, your emblem's in the bottom corner a little bit, but you could tell it's
yeah, that's cool. And I also got to work with Jennifer Marshall on one of the TV shows, who was Max's mom on Stranger Things. But we just were on the same show. Like she investigated Camp Hero with us, though. It was cool. And Sam Tripoli, who's comedian. I
So
don't know
then,
if you
have
know
you
him.
ever talked to them about giving a plug for the real life survivors who've been left high and dry? And gee, the billions you guys are making with Netflix would be kind
Actually,
of nice to
yeah,
spread around.
the Duffer Brothers, they got their ass kicked around a little bit, but I mean they got kicked right out of Montauk and period. Right? Like, I mean, they're in Indiana. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
there
I have
it
that
was
original script here somewhere.
yeah, it was called the Montauk Project, but now it's Stranger Things and they're in Indiana and
Yeah.
there are no like it's very interesting to me. But then again, I guess they don't want attention out there because it's their quaint little town and their tourist town and their whatever, right? And
It is
but
really
you
nice.
still,
That was one of the things I noticed when I visited. I was like, man, this place is pretty freaking awesome. Like, this is a nice spot. Like, no wonder why people like to come out here on vacation.
Yeah, it's
but then you
beautiful.
still have active Plum Island, you still have active Brookhaven Labs, right? I mean, they're you get met with rifles when you go there. I mean, it's armed, it's still, and there's still plenty of stuff going on underground there.
Well,
And
Mike, please, can you please talk to our viewers a lot? Because we're always talking Montauk, like Marcia, but we
Yeah.
very rarely get to Plum Island. And how far is Plum Island? And then what is the weird biological weapons, Dr. Jekyll type is, or Island of
well,
Dr. Moreau stuff happening on Plum
I
Island?
I think we could safely say Camp Hero, they were playing with humans, right? They were playing with kids. Um, I have inside info that they were taking similar to the way Jane was taken from her mom, and her mom's rocking around in Stranger Things, and she's like kind of crazy. They were taking children. Some of them were coming from babies from the psychiatric centers and stuff as babies. Some of them were getting, taken other ways, whatever. We won't go into that, but obviously they were working on, human beings, right? Plum Island is animals. Bioweapons, we could talk about the tick. I mean, I think
Mhm.
the tick came from there, you know, the almighty blood sucking.
Which there's a lot of scientific, like pretty hardcore evidence that
Yeah.
that's
I
true.
got that in there.
What it was, Mike, is they took the Texas longhorn tick and then they weaponized it further by giving it special bacteria, spirochetes, the Lyme disease spirochete, Bergdorferi, something like that. It's Bergdorferi is a bacteria, but they did is they weaponized the Texas longhorn tick and then set that thing loose.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
here.
I mean, from as the crow flies, it's very close to Montauk. It's literally
Yeah.
the same tip. It's just the other side of, you know, just on the other side,
Yep.
the other fork, and then right in the middle. I mean, it forms a perfect triangle. You know, as the crow flies, is Brookhaven Labs, and we know damn well too that that goes straight underground too. And if you look at Plum Island from the top, the ferry passes by there from New London, Connecticut to Orient Point, Long Island all day long. The workers that go to Plum Island, they take a separate ferry and they get frisked up and down, and then they go, you know, and it looks just from above ground, it looks like a nice little forested island, right? But with a giant tower on it, nobody notices because it's thin, but it goes high, right? You wouldn't notice what it was. You know, you wouldn't think it, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. And God knows what's going on down there. But you have things like the Montauk Monster washing up on the beach.
Oh yeah. And this guy here. Show
You
you.
know,
This guy washed up on the beach. I reassembled this from the police coroner sketch. This was in the newspaper. Six human had drill holes in his head.
and
Plum Island.
Brookhaven Labs is also called Fort Upton as well.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
like they are bases, right? Like, so like, and there's like an atomizer separator, which I don't really even know what it does, but like, what do we need that for, right? Like,
Yep.
in 92,
Make
they
them.
saw a plane get shot. They saw a UFO get shot down. Like everybody and their mom saw it get shot down. You know, I tried to find that location, you know, about a year ago with another researcher. There's an industrial park slapped right on top of it. You know, it doesn't exist anymore at that location. You know, so there's no evidence to be found, you know. But, you know, if you dig in history, you find things. And it's still there, plain as day. I've tried to get into Brookhaven Labs. The last guy that tried to get in there was, I believe, a paranormal leader of like a paranormal Long Island group, and he's locked up. They went after him pretty hard.
Oh,
They ruined it. So
Gone for it.
thanks for the imagery there, Brian.
Oh,
that is
no
cool.
problem. I Oh, okay. Yeah. Well. Oh, that's Brian. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I didn't know if you meant the
Oh, I
guy
should
from Plum Island.
for this whole interview, I'll call the other Brian the SolarBee.
SolarBee.
Yeah, I'll call you SolarBee, and I'll call the Montauk Brian just Brian.
Okay.
So SolarBee and Brian for the rest of the interview, just so that people don't get confused.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a lot of that stuff that Mike just mentioned, like a little sub chapter on each with a few things. You know, pretty much everything he said. Exactly. All our local stuff. You know, I included because it all does connect in some way to Montauk.
And your imagery is great too, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you, man. That's a page from the book, and it had like what Mike was talking about, the original impact crater from the UFO. John
Oh,
Ford
wow.
that was
Holy
locked
crap.
up.
Right,
And,
yeah, you could see where
and
it's.
I got a lot about B&L because I've been there, of course, myself.
So there's
And,
like a UFO crash in the area, right?
a couple, yeah. I list them all in the book. There's mass sightings. I pretty much listed every sighting that I found in the media from Montauk in chronological order. But like I mentioned, the crash at supposedly a recovered disc crash at Montauk in 1981, and then there's the South Haven crash and the Mauritius Bay crash, which were like 2 years apart, and up closer to B&L, actually very close to B&L, like Mike said. He's been there investigating. I always wanted to go, and I haven't been there. I do remember the old video of the fire that they were putting out on off the highway, and all of the rumors, the local rumors. I wrote about all those in the book, and I also reference other local writers that have books on UFOs in the Pine Barrens and stuff like that. And I paraphrase some of their stuff just to make the whole picture, to build the whole
So then
evidence around it.
I gotta ask you, Brian, given all this work and you've got this chronology here of multiple, not like you had me at one UFO, multiple crashes here. And then I know that Rocco Fowler has mentioned if you go to Camp Hero, he says under certain situations, you can see a UFO shining a green laser. So I got to ask, is there a connection here?
I wrote about the green lights at Montauk in the most modern of sightings. There's several people, including fishermen who were out in the water at the time. Somebody I know saw one from town, but there's some kind of green glow or light that's emanating out of there for years on end. It's been talked about. So some people tried to write it off as plankton in the ocean, but this is described otherwise. So, and one guy has pictures of it, but I couldn't reprint those.
What do you think it is? Like, is it so? My whole thing is, okay, you got the military bases where they've got the nuclear weapons and they're launching these missile tests, and then the UFOs come and they're disarming the missiles.
Maelstrom.
They're coming to the Maelstrom, or they're going to the nuclear bases where maybe they're producing the weapons and they're disarming those somehow, right? And then they're even talking about it through ET contactees. Do you see it as more these are UFOs that were like hostile and they're kind of checking out the progress of like the secret space program stuff occurring at Montauk, and they're getting shot down, and those are the crashes and they're being recovered? Are those friendlies who are just like they can't fly?
I think it was when they're depending on, so I'm thinking that this was them testing them out and crashing them because they didn't know how to fly them. I mean, that's the most logical answer.
And there's another part Linda Moulton Howe had on her show of somebody who was supposedly in the Air Force called an agency called JSOP, and they were a crash and recovery team and identify as threat, friendly or foe, and then shoot down and then recover. So she said that they were shooting them out of the sky all the time. Yeah, and that's what Preston said too. He says he personally shot one of them out of the sky, but it might have gotten lost in the story.
But my question.
They have
Arkheim Labs is said to shot the people, at least with the 92 crash, the people who were reporting it that lived around South Haven State Park said that they saw something come from Brookhaven Labs and then the exploded and then the UFO crash. So something went and then
Mike's right.
For whatever, I don't. I mean, I don't have a damn clue. I was like 12 years old, not even.
Yeah, he's right. Like a part of what they do is collide atoms, right? But at the end of that, you can make a particle accelerator. I mean, at the end of a particle accelerator, you could make a what do you call it? I'm so sorry.
I know what you're trying to say.
A particle weapon, a particle beam weapon. But Brookhaven has, if you look up the National Synchronistic Light Source, NSLS, it's the biggest the ultraviolet and infrared light cannon on the planet Earth, and it's the only one really ever built, and it's capable of firing an infrared or ultraviolet beam that can do things that we haven't thought of because it's a massive. It looks like a particle ring from space. They also have the LHC.
There would be evidence. So people have been testifying. For instance, there's an individual. I'm brain farting on the name. He talks about Antarctica a lot, but basically he talks about
Admiral Byrd. Oh, I know who you're talking about.
The laser that he talks about, the laser that he worked for. I think it was Raytheon, maybe. And he
Mike Barra, maybe.
No, different guy. He was on. Man, I wish I was better with names. I'm not good with names. I'm not a names guy. But he talks about how they use lasers to communicate over vast distances. You can use lasers to communicate and stuff like that, and like ETs will use them to communicate. So I found that really interesting that apparently Montauk had that technology, and apparently there's something similar in Antarctica. Is what I know this guy's name is Eric. I can't think of his last name. I'm really having a brain fart. But yeah. Anyway, there's been other people who have talked about like the lasers and how they use those to communicate and stuff like that. And that technology has a lot of different interesting applications that I don't think we know about right now. There's also like scalar waves.
Yeah,
I remember
dues.
that being a thing that they were like messing around with a lot at Montauk, which those can like go to other realities or like back and forth through time. Like they can just kind of go anywhere at any time. It's really interesting stuff. But yeah, it's just like I said, another example of like evidence of like, different whistleblowers' testimony lining up with like, actual physical evidence. So I always find that interesting. And I think there's a whole lot of that in this book that you have where it's like it's all the stuff that people have talked about over the years, even just like Preston Nichols and those guys like talk a lot of stuff they talked about. You found a lot of evidence of what they're talking about in the book
Yeah,
being like, and you kind of like talk about it a little bit a few times. So
thanks.
it's
Yeah,
really
we were lucky
important.
enough to meet them when we were kids, just as like, authors. And so we were in a crowd with a whole bunch of people, but they were all there. Duncan,
Oh, thank
Al,
God. Thank
Preston,
God that there
Peter.
were a bunch of people there present.
Yeah, exactly. So we were skeptical in the first place. We actually gave, just because meeting anybody, back then we did it by letter, and then he had called and gave us the meeting, info. And we went to a second one. We brought different friends, and some of them were challenging, the story. And I had pictures, but the point is knowing it, yeah, from way back, watching it over the years, different people, getting involved in the story or becoming part of the story, or maybe just realizing they were involved. That's grown exponentially since the beginning. But it's always been a thing, like when people hear it, it seems like more people realize something, and then they get drawn into it. So it's very interesting on that aspect too, how Montauk pulls people in that sense. But like you were saying, there's something more to the land itself. Even what Mike was saying, I had a part in there where I gave Mike credit for coining, the Long Island Triangle as a term, because between B&L, Plum Island, and Montauk, it's like an area of strange happenings, and even outside that triangle. But those three were all three World War II forts, and they were like Fort Terry was Plum Island, Camp Upton was B&L, like Mike said, and Camp Hero was then became the Montauk Air Force Station, where they did high-tech radar and developed the very beginning of the internet there. 1954, they were starting the internet. They had wide area networks like WANs, and all kinds of basically printed circuit boards. They rolled them out. It was called the experimental SAGE system, and SageNet was the very first internet, essentially, over real time. And so then what you actually hear people say is ARPANET is the beginning. But before that, there's something called the online system. And they had that installed at Montauk in 62. But that came from SageNet, which Montauk was the second SAGE radar built, but the first one out in there in the field. So everything they learned for the first time about SAGE and microwave radar was learned at Montauk. So, and that included developing the first real-time computers, which is insane. I mean, they were going from Navy computers that look like gears in a clock into the first digital computers with vacuum
So
tubes.
that lines up with the testimony that I've talked about. I mean, I've talked about Brian's dad being connected possibly to Montauk and the computer tech revolution, and how there was alien technology, and how we gave him some Monarch programming to help him along his way, and also to help Brian become part of this whole thing that we're doing now, which is all wild, right? But like it's funny that you say that, because that just lines up with like I haven't ever like found like the evidence of that before. Now you're talking about that, and it kind of lines up. Like, yeah, the computer revolution, like, Preston would always talk about, like, yeah, that technology right there. The technology in your camera that comes from aliens, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, like they say, like that supposed treaty, the possible treaty with was it Ike, I guess, Eisenhower, um,
Well,
and
yeah,
Truman.
the
Yeah, where they exchange.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors. Like they'd
Yeah,
say that 92 crash is where they found the whatever that little chip or whatever the synthesizer, whatever the hell it was. And
yeah,
it does line it kind of lines up with when the back of our TVs used to be this big and then all of a sudden they stuck to the wall and they were just staying and now we got
yeah.
computers, we got
LCDs.
phones with this big and that, you know what I mean?
And
And
then another
everything.
aspect that's really interesting about that too is for me, like a big thing that I've been talking about lately is like, the phones, like smartphones, like which, there's a great deal of alien technology in that. I really think that they're pretty like hardcore form of mind control. And like, of course, you got people like us who are using a lot of these apps and things like that to spread awareness, and it's all great and good, but at a baseline level, it's really used as like mind control and like it's reading people's minds. Like you think about something and then you see an advertisement. And this happens so often that to people that it's happened to, you know what's happening, and people still
Mm.
use the technology, even though that's got to be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's just an example of where do you think that technology came from? It came
Yes.
from Montauk. And what Montauk is all about is controlling the population, mind controlling the population, making basically like a working class of slaves, and just like yeah, it's kind of wild to see how it's in a weird way, and I've never said this before, but I have a feeling I'm going to say this a lot now. All roads lead back to Montauk, it seems like in a lot of ways. Like
That was kind of like what I was, really getting to. That's why I dug into things that didn't quite seem directly involved with the story. But then when you find this stuff, you're like, that does, it supports it in an all around way. And yeah, there's definitely the technology that's just like an explosion of technology in those years. But things do lead back to Montauk a lot. I
think about
found
the
that in
last 20
everything.
years, you guys. Think about it, right? We 20 years ago we had like these crappy little dial-up computers that could barely do load a video. If you wanted to
Yeah,
watch a 3-minute video of like some
amazing.
band that you like, they came on the music video, you have to like wait for it to download for 3 hours. You'd go do something else, come back. All right, I can watch it now. And it's just like 3 minutes long. And
Yeah.
now we're doing live video streaming conferences and stuff and putting and live streaming them on the internet simultaneously and all this stuff. Like that's an exponential amount of growth in a pretty small amount of time. And it does make you
Yeah.
wonder about some of
Yeah.
the yeah, and then when you look like, you can really look back and see that if you trace back some of these technologies and where they come from,
Yes.
a lot of it has to do with the military industrial complex and reverse engineering alien tech. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, that you're right about the like the first radar technicians heard the microwave radar in their heads, like the interference almost buzzing. Oh, then Frey wrote in a paper on it in 61, the scientist studying it. So when you hear a microwave hit your head, it sounds like buzzing, clicking, a hiss, or a pop. So then they figured out how to like block it with certain materials, like your Faraday cage type of idea. But long story short, this was accepted. The Air Force has a patent for it that they filed in '96. That was granted and everything, and so understood that they can help people who are hearing impaired hear, even if they've been hearing impaired their whole life, they can't hear at all. They can put words into your head. So this technology is exactly what people are talking about, either mind control through suggestion or mood control. So that's when you get into like the Montauk radar. When they discovered that, they started fine tuning it empirically, gathering data, empirical data, and then cataloging it and finding out how to change people's moods, general moods
and
with
now they're
different
using the phone as a remote device to,
and yeah, the cell
connect.
towers are essentially an omnidirectional microwave transmitter on a pole, just like the top of the Montauk radar. That pole on top, that's an omnidirectional microwave.
So they're
They
using
didn't
it to
need the
mind
dish
control
anymore.
people. And so one of the good things about it is like the internet has come out of it, which is part of the system that they're using to control us, and it's their excuse to build it. So, and then in using, we're basically using that system the best we can to subvert what they're doing before it can come to fruition, which I've basically seen, and I don't want to go too far off the rails here, but there's a possible future that we could reach in the 2700s, which is why the Preston put that horse on the cover of his book, and it's why it's on my book and stuff. There's a
Oh,
future
nice.
we really want to avoid right now, and I think that's a lot of what's going on with talking about Montauk and this whole thing. But like I said again, I don't want to go too off the rails and want to focus on your book. But one
That's
thing,
in the book, the Lucifer chapter
Lucifer.
is about that golden horse in the city and the far future. Actually, it's a
Actually,
short
can
little
you talk
piece.
about that, please? Let's talk about that because
Yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
Lucifer and the future city, I think that needs to be talked about more. And then I got a question for you after that. Just what connections, if any, you've discovered between in your Montauk research to any secret space program stuff. I'm trying to bridge that gap. But
Sure.
please back to Lucifer and the Golden City.
Okay, yeah, I did first a quick video on it, but I wrote it into a subchapter just mentioning, I quoted the part from Preston and Peter Moon's original book that talks about the city like almost directly. So I gave him source and everything. But also Lucifer, is this secret. There's this whole thing about the airport, the paintings that were in Denver, the apocalyptic.
I know who's responsible for those paintings.
Oh wow, yeah, that's interesting.
Apparently, I just found out his first name is Tim. His last name might begin with an H, and he's from that Colorado area. He was tied up with a Colorado Freemasons. He's apparently come out and said, taking
Yeah.
responsibility for this. And then
Wow.
he's pushing himself as one of these Knights Templar people, which
Sure.
who might be actually masquerading just as a black magician.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the symbols are all there, right? They have the plaque dedicated, and then there's just a new one. I just took a screenshot. They have an ad up on the wall. Off topic for a sec, but it's a reptilian carrying a luggage like off the plane. As
Yeah.
you know, they have the gargoyle mocking people. So anyway, there's this whole thing about the underground city of the future. A dome where it can survive and become the headquarters of the New World Order of the West US, so on and so forth. And then you think of Preston's book where like there are thousands of years in the future. So I question, like, I went to Luis Jimenez's Wikipedia, the guy who built Lucifer, and how it unfortunately killed him and caused so much bad luck along the process. It was kind of like cursed, but in the end, I wondered how it's fiberglass. So I looked up the Ayurvedic, or no, Danielle actually pointed me towards to look up Ayurvedic building materials because they mentioned how long cement, mortar, and like fiberglass is. So it apparently lasts a couple thousand years, but 6,000 may be a stretch. So how is it plated in gold? Now gold is it's twice the density of lead. So I mean, gold would last through quite a bit, except for heat, obviously.
Is it plated in gold?
Well, the cover of the Montauk Project Experiments in Time has the golden horse in the city. Lucifer isn't plated with gold, but he's in the very same position, the upright, standing on back legs, as the cover of the Montauk Project. So I was trying to see if there was any connection between the two, essentially.
What I think is that Lucifer is the golden horse.
Yes.
And I think that because I've seen the horse myself and stuff, and it's one of those things where it's eerie because I mean it's either at least in the same place and everything's different. That piece of land is not the same at all, but there's still the statue of a horse there, which is really weird.
Yeah, that is.
What I found though, and I could actually share an image if you guys want real quick here, which I think is really interesting. Hold on one second. Find it, image it. It's the image of like the PSYOP division of the military, and it is a golden horse.
Wow.
Yeah, with it's like I'm trying to, man, I hate how hard it is for me to find stuff, but I really want to show this now. I forgot what I named it in my files, and I got so many freaking pictures. But
started making my own Lucifer for my desk here. Just because I found one that looked like
I got it right here, Arkheim.
yeah, share it on your screen.
Oh wow, look at that.
It still won't let me share my screen, but here, I'll just put it up here like this on my camera.
Oh, it's a knight.
My blurry camera.
Yeah, and if you can find the one that actually says there's words, it says like control. I can't remember what it says, but here it is. It's the green one. Or no, and then there's another one. Persuade,
Persuade, change, and influence.
Yeah, per se change.
Oh wow.
And it is very clearly a golden horse, and it's got two swords behind it. So like
Good
lightning
find.
swords behind it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's the actual like the psyop division of like the military. That's like our official symbol. It's got the golden horse on it. So
Interesting.
yeah, there's something, and here's it's really all I got. I got more questions than answers with this. Like, what's the deal with the horse? Like,
Yeah,
it almost seems like those people in the future. It almost seems like they worship the horse or something. It's
it
really,
is like the center of the city, right? And
yeah, really
it,
weird.
it does like for some reason it's a symbol or it's something that's still standing or that's it. I found two of these. I was gonna paint one gold and paint one blue. I only did this blue one. I need the red eyes, but it's
Yeah,
it's in this like upright position, kind of both of them, right? They're almost like
yeah.
identical as far as the position. That's just from a desktop, but you know what I mean.
So is this the same
I'm with you on that.
is this the same golden city? Is there like the super intelligent AI that's supposed to
Yeah.
run the country and the world? Is that
Yep.
it's right there at that city and
Yes.
Denver basically at probably the
I
site?
believe so, like it's kind of hard to place it, but like I think so. Yeah, I think that's where it is because it lines up with this. There's a massive underground city there. There's a gold, like a statue of a horse on the surface. Like it'd be weird if it was somewhere else. I think it's the same place.
Yeah, I agree on that one, and definitely that's interesting about the symbolism's always you keep finding more, and then when you find enough of it, it's like a pile of stuff that's all the same. So I think you're onto something with and the chess piece might mean something as well, like the
Oh yeah,
knight.
that's part of it. It's part of like mind control. I'm actually gonna start playing chess. I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah, I love
chess.
chess.
I'm gonna get into it. Yeah, me and my partner have been talking. I got my buddy Dublin have talked about we've been talking about we're gonna get a chessboard and start playing chess.
Cool.
Like yeah, yeah.
There's
I
one
think
on
I've heard it's good to help understand war and like how manipulating people works and stuff like that. And also it's just like a fun game that,
yep.
kind of challenges your mind a little bit. So
You think several moves ahead, and you visualize patterns, and yeah, it does. It sharpens up things you don't usually use, and but also it's a great game. There's one called Battle Chess. If you ever play on it's used to be a game, but it's fun. Where the chess pieces come alive and they come and take each other out.
Chess is, yeah, chess is intense.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It is. It's
So,
really good.
Another thing I want to ask you about, this one's a little bit heavy for me, but I'm just gonna come right out and ask you about it. Is
Sure.
when you were walking through the underground portion of Camp Hero when you were younger, you came across the toxic waste barrels.
Yeah, that was below and on the surface as well.
What did they look like?
I got pictures of them. There was 60-gallon black drums, and some of them scrawled black sludge is the picture I have with me. It's a black and white picture. I'm holding, like this black sludge, but some of them had green glowing stuff, which my friend lifted up the lid. But they were everywhere. There was like a couple hundred. I have a video of them on a platform.
Were any of them yellow?
The barrels
Where
themselves,
was this
no.
at? Wait. Barrels of glowing sludge where?
There was black barrels when we were first going to Camp Hero. They were like there was big piles of soil covered up with plastic. There was like black 60-gallon drums filled with all kinds of toxic waste there. They were doing a super fund cleanup there, and that's when they took out a lot of the entrances to the underground. And from that point on, it was very hard to basically see it get underground at all because they had been
I remember
sealing.
them put in
Well,
bodies of kids in those 60-gallon drums, but they were yellow, and they said radioactive waste on them.
well,
So
I think
I asked
there
that
was
question.
there was a recent message too, I think, about not going underground or about things like watching your step type shit. I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
What's that?
Brian, you might know what I'm talking about that intel I got from the waitress.
Yes.
So I go off season a lot, and I have some connections out there and some friends and whatever, and pretty much it's just me and the locals, right? and I spent some time out there, and some guy was out doing his morning hike, I guess, right at Camp Hero, and the waitress just starts going nuts, like, I'm sorry, I gotta go, like, they're gonna help you, I gotta go. Grabs her daughter next door who owns the candy store, closes it down, they go running. They're trying to beat the police, which is the interesting part. They're trying to they want to beat they find out something tragic happened, and they're trying to beat the police and anybody else there. They apparently they didn't trust what was going to be done or whatever. So this healthy man somehow fell in a hole that was not very deep, not very wide, not very deep. We don't know why he was so far off trail or how he fell in, but they found him very, very dismembered. Like if you do watch Stranger Things and you see the way Vecna picks people up and snaps them, that's kind of how he was found. He was kind of found like a jigsaw puzzle, like tap, 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 tap. And and it wasn't a big drop. He was a healthy guy. Like there was no reason why this would have killed him or done anything to him. And of course, the police got there, shortly after. But they saw what they saw, and and they were booted from there. And that's about as much of that as I got, But the part that interested me that was that they took off so fast because they wanted to beat the authorities. They didn't, you know what I mean? They didn't trust them to, they didn't trust them to be the first responders. So take that, and that's present day. That's only going back 3, maybe 4 years. You know what I mean?
So what do you, Mike, what do you attribute that guy being all jigsaw puzzled to?
No idea. No idea. You know what I mean?
All weird fucking Stranger Things type shit. That's what happened. You know what I mean? Something weird happened to that guy.
Could be a message. Could have been somebody. I don't know. Maybe somebody did something to him. But I mean, again, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. I think they say that there's landmines off trails still. I don't think there are. I think they say that just so people don't go poking around. That's my theory. Can I prove it? No. I can't. Of course not. Maybe there isn't
poking around for mines.
Well, you know what I mean. If you see something, if you pick up a pamphlet that says Camp Hero map, and then you pick up a pamphlet next to it that says there might be unexploded, UXOs off that trail, chances are the average Joe isn't going to go off the trail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People like us are like, who gives a shit? We're gonna go, we're gonna go look anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
they had some serious stuff to clean up there, definitely. That's for sure. I mean, even when we were down on the ocean, down on the bluffs, we saw oil coming out of the bluffs and stuff like that in certain spots. So there's military waste from so long, but it is the land does seem to be growing through everything, breaking the concrete of the roads that used to be there. There's vines climbing up the tower. The tower is losing all its panels. So I mean, you can see.
Yeah.
But
I remember too. I found a lost dog and didn't know what to do because there was nowhere to go. There was nobody around, and it was actually in the neighborhood that we stayed in. Like at the intersection of the main road where the house that we stayed in. It was at the intersection of that main road and whatever, that block. And I actually went into the police station and nobody was in there. I had to call the cops from the police station, and it took me time to get there. There was nobody around. So it's a weird place, man. I suggest visiting in off season when nobody's around and go, you can really, really poke around. There's nobody.
Yep.
There's nobody there.
During the fall or something like that, or even the winter.
Yeah.
As soon as beach season's over, it's a ghost town.
Yeah.
It's a ghost town.
You can see more
That's a lot of
structures out
fun
there.
during the beach season, though. Looks like. I mean, that's what I experienced. They're a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. It's great. It's very it's very upbeat. Like it's a very positive place, like to an extent. And then
Got this dark underbelly to it.
yes, there's that other energy, and I think it's somewhat of a vortex because I've experienced both ends of it. You know what I mean? Especially in that circle we were talking about earlier. Like I've feared it. I've walked into it like it was nothing, and then I feared it like it was gonna kill, like it was gonna eat me alive. And it's just a little blade, it's just a little circle of grass. Like what is it, right?
Yeah. That's definitely one of the most interesting parts that about the base there. That's the interesting, like how it was chosen way back, like the very first president, a huge, like known
Another
grandmaster.
way, yeah, another way I know they pay attention to Brian is Brian spray painted saw a picture on a building, and then they painted the whole entire barracks, the whole place, except for his picture. I mean, they painted over thousands of spray paint except for his. Just left
Yeah.
his picture.
That's true.
And I mean, yeah, and it was really weird.
They
Well,
filmed
what did you put on there, Brian? What was
it was a UFO beaming up, putting out a tractor beam or something. My standard UFO back in the day when I was really young, obviously. I was probably like 15, 16 when I did that.
I just they got rid of all of it, but they left.
I'm not this age doing that, but yeah, they left it, and then I saw it on the show I was on. They filmed an interview in front of it, and I'm like, what the heck? That's still there. I'm like, and then I look, I found the old pictures of it. We go to it now. We keep going and checking. It's still there. I can't believe it. But yeah, it's one of those weird. I guess there maybe somebody just liked the UFO, maybe, but I don't know.
They're like, oh, this one's cool.
Maybe
We can leave this. This is all right.
I don't know if there's anything to it, but yeah, like
Yeah.
I think some.
There's definitely been some weird, very weird things that have made me feel like that over the years. Like, and
Well, Brian and Mike, maybe you guys could talk a bit about, how magical Montauk is, that whole Long Island, the Montauk tribes having the land stolen from them.
Sure.
If there's anything underground or geological that's interesting about that area. And then, what was I going to say? Just, it seems to me, just as an outside observer here, as far as I can tell so far, you've got like Brookhaven National Labs. That's already right there on the East Coast and already on Long Island. And, it's kind of makes sense to it's accessible to New York City, to the eggheads living there, but it's also far enough outside the city that, say, if you opened up a portal to the upside down, at least it's not in the middle of downtown Manhattan, right? And then from there, once, word's getting out about funny things or strange things occurring at Brookhaven National Labs, central to Long Island, they decided, kids disappearing in the area and weird things being seen in the sky and power outages or whatever, I would suppose. They then decided, well, let's move out to Camp Hero, this, World War II at that point abandoned army base with an underground, and let's just set up shop there. And it seemed like it just seems like a variety of things worked out so easily there for to end up there. Like, can you guys comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, definitely.
But Mike, go first.
Yeah, the land is definitely sacred. Like I did a whole thing on Council Rock, you know what I mean? Which is, anyone who's been near it, like, can sense its energy, and it's like on Indian burial grounds, and Montauk Manor is right next door, which has its own history and all that too. And that's right on top of the hill. Touching back on Stranger Things, when Dustin wants to go and talk to his girlfriend with Cerebro, his radio thing, that's where he goes. He goes to that hill up there, and it pretty much overlooks all Montauk. But anyway, that's it's a very sacred area, and that's where Council Rock is, where all the natives used to go out to meet and all those different things. And there's so much so much land that is very sacred and
It's said
also
that
tainted, you know.
Council Rock has like a memory inside of it that you can access if you're a medium and you touch the rock, kind of like in the movie Avatar, where like there's an ancestral memory sort of thing when they
Yeah.
with the tree. It's kind of like the same concept, but it's like in a rock. I know that might sound kind of like
No, the rock record, you're right. Yeah,
yeah,
quartz.
yeah.
It's made of it's actually
Yeah,
quartz, the Council Rock. So it's that's what computers are using for memory too, you know. So
yeah,
that
it's got
that's
its own
absolutely.
Akashic records. Yeah, like I mean, there's yeah. We'll go into the rest, Brian. But yeah,
Well, yeah, Mike's right that like that was the place that all of all of the tribes of Long Island from Brooklyn and Queens all the way out to Montauk would come and meet because it was such a sacred place. And then like when the founding fathers, the lighthouse, the Montauk Lighthouse was the very first public works project in the US. The very first thing we built as a country was the Montauk Lighthouse to guide people from the New World to the United States safely. It was actually the Statue of Liberty before the Statue of Liberty. So on and so
Oh,
forth.
so
So
that's very like
you see how like
very symbolic. And one thing that I've noticed too is there seems to be this like symbolism with the lighthouse. And I think that's a big part of it. What you're saying right there is like the bringing people to the new world, which a lot of this has to do with the New World Order. Right. And then I've also noticed that, and this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I think it's also on topic, is like I've noticed that there are these lighthouse movies. Like there's this one with Willem Dafoe, and like he's in a lighthouse and like he loses his mind basically. And
Oh
then
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then there's another one with Gerard Butler, and it's kind of like the same idea. And what's weird is I remember both of like Gerard Butler, as bizarre as it might sound, he's a time soldier. And I've served with him and I remember him. And Willem Dafoe, I don't know if he was at Montauk or not, but he's also like in programs and stuff. And I've
It's
also
really it's
him.
really funny you mentioned Gerard Butler because he and his wife were hanging out and kind of low key partying with Johnny Enoch and friends at Contact in the Desert last year.
Gerard Butler, the actor.
Yes, yes. And then
Yeah,
he
I've served with
talking about
him.
he's
And one of my clones, when he hit me up, he told me exactly where I could go. There was this house. He said that there was like a elevator to like the underground cloning center in Davenport. And he said that like one of my clones was there, and he was with basically a clone of Gerard. But he was like, he said his name was like something else, but he's like, you'd know him as Gerard Butler. Look him up. And I had never heard of that actor before. Okay, I've seen him and stuff, but I didn't know his name. And I look him up, and sure enough, it's a guy. And he told me the address. And like I
Oh,
looked it up on Google Maps and everything was a real address. He's like, yeah, you could go there right now, and there's a clone of yours there. I'm like, hell no. I mean, it would have been interesting, but like,
yeah. No, yeah.
why would you
Probably a
do
good
it?
choice.
Would you
No,
do
it's
it?
probably a
Would you
smart
go?
choice.
no. I
That
mean,
would have probably been like a like guy kills me and tries to replace me in my life type shit. Like a
yeah,
horror movie kind of thing. Like that could have happened because what my alters are, they think I'm like the my clones. Like again, not to get off topic, but like they think I'm like the lowest common denominator. I'm stupid, and I'm the cover of the fall guy for them. But anyway, back to the book. Um,
well, even in Aquaman too, wasn't the guy like a lighthouse keeper, like the guy who like married like the girl for like the queen of Atlantis, like he was like a lighthouse keeper
Good
too,
point.
right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's some
No,
symbolism there.
that's what I was gonna say. Like the fifth chapter goes into like the place itself, but I rewound like all through time and how important it was, like the place that will one day become Montauk, the island in the sea. And I go all the way back to the beginning to like our first, well, whatever we can to work with, which is Pangea, the giant supercontinent. And if you look at where Montauk is on Long Island, and if you assemble the continents back, Pangea is, Eastern Long Island is almost touching the Eye of the Sahara, which many people speculate is Atlantis right there in front of our eyes, hidden for all to see because it's not underwater. It's long since been,
The Eye of the Sahara, yeah.
yeah,
That's
the
where I think it
reconstruction.
is. A lot of people say it's like all these other places. I'm not claiming I know. Well, I know it was also an empire, so there's like more,
Yeah, there's all
but
this,
apparently
so
the
many things.
capital was in the Eye of the Sahara, but then other people say it was other places. Doesn't really
Yeah.
matter where it was. We all know it existed, but that'd be interesting, like you said, that if that is true, that it's in the ICA area and it's right next to it. That's definitely a very interesting fact.
Yeah, like it looks
Very
like the
possible. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that.
so there's just little things like that to make you basically I just want to give it all. I don't want to say this is exactly what I think in the book. I basically present everything I found, and I want you guys to like choose your, you figure it out and whatever believe, and then work with whatever I have for, take it and use it please, and dig or whatever you want to do with it. And what I wanted to do is leave it open-ended but add a lot of possibilities too, like it could be this, it could be that. So a lot of speculation, of course, but definitely open, and I want to leave it open-ended for everybody. So, and I wanted to share it since I started showing, people the collection. Like when I sat down with Mike and DHP at the campground with this big bunch of stuff, and they were saying, you got to share this. So I just want everybody else to have it at least. So I'm not like sitting on it and doing nothing with it, basically.
When
And
you
that was
pulled
one of
those
my
papers
inspirations.
out, yeah, when he pulled those papers out, I was like, publish that shit. Like as is, I just take that somewhere. Like it was just like as he was going through the pages, I was like, that's a book like from heaven right there. Like and you guys will see it like when you get it and you go through it, like you'll see what I mean. Like it's sick. Like it's one of those books you can just keep going back into, like almost like a textbook reference book, like or a read book or whatever. Like it's got all the military aspects, the native aspects, the whatever, like pictures like galore. Like I mean, it's it's a publisher's nightmare, and I get why you went. I get why you went your own route because, they would have a publisher would have been like, cut that out, cut that out, cut that out, cut that out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, but you spared no.
That's the one they really don't want to see. I mean, they really
Right,
don't.
look at all that
It's
ink.
the full black page, the cover of a document. But I know it probably runs the ink cartridge out every time they print a copy. Like it's just solid. That's just the cover of the document that I printed there. So it's like, but like Mike said, I got the photocopies, just printed as is. They wanted to retype them for me, but I had to explain like some of these are like never seen or like Freedom of Information Act documents that were shared with me, or old blueprints that there aren't any other copies. So it's just like printed all.
So that wasn't to piss Book Baby off, or because you got an inside investing deal with a toner cartridge company.
that could work as a thing, but yeah, no, they were great to me as far as linking all of the 9 tables of contents for me in the ebook, which was, they said they couldn't do more than one at first, but then they went ahead and just did it for me. So they were really cool like that. But yeah, it's got a bunch of stuff, and I hope, like Mike said, people can take it and just look up one thing if they want, or just look at a picture and then put it back on the shelf, and they know it's there to like check something, or I put in as much info as I could for everybody, and that's basically it. And it does read through like a book too. There's 5 chapters with all kinds of weaving through different things, and of course our own.
There's like stories in it. It reads like kind of like Mike was saying, like parts of it read a little bit like a novel, like some short stories and stuff, and then parts of it are like very just like information and just kind of facts and stuff, and it's kind of like all over the place, but like not in a bad way, like in a good way. Like it's very multi-dimensional book. It comes at it from a lot of different angles at once, which is helpful to help people get like a full picture of it and understand it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's essentially it. Yep. And then also tried to make it, if you do read cover to cover, it has some kind of coherency that way too. But I don't expect anybody to do that because it is a hard read, even
no, that's not too bad. 400
piece
pages.
by piece.
One of the things
like
that
the documents,
from when I talk to people and stuff like that is they actually like a lot of content. They like longer videos. Actually, they like big books. Like if you give them more content, they're happier. So I don't think that it's a bad thing that you made your book big. I think like we're all impressed by it and we're happy with it. And there's so much there. And it's like something you come back to and keep looking at. And another thing too is people are investing their money in it. You're getting your money out of it. It's got a lot of information in it. So I'm sure people will more than welcome you for that. That's not something to disparage you for at all. That's great that it's got so much going on, and it's good that it's thick.
Thanks
Um,
for the kind words, man. I appreciate
yeah.
that.
One thing too I thought was really interesting about your book, which I've noticed this kind of stuff too, actually, in the town that I come from, and I talk a little bit about my testimony, how my town kind of was weird, and I think there's like an underground thing there, and it's not Montauk-y kind of things going on, but that's a whole other story. But I thought it was kind of
And William Defoe,
a Willem Dafoe, yeah, in the underground
right?
structure, and he's
Yeah.
from there. He's from there, but yeah, but what I wanted to ask you about was like you kind of like said you would like run into like people that seemed almost like they were like actors or like fake people, and they'd ask you weird questions and seem overly interested in what you're doing and stuff like that. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. When we first started going, there was more of that where you'd see. I also referenced other people that mentioned that too. So like one stealth skater, I think it was an old blog. They were talking about it too. So I included all their references. So everybody who came across these kind of people, like a local worker, theirs in particular was a General Electric worker. He had a full GE suit, and he came in and he walked past them and he said, "Nice day, huh?" with a big menacing grin. And they thought it was weird. They got like goosebumps the way he said it. No big deal. He walks off. Then later they see him coming from a total different direction. And instead of acknowledging them, then he just walks right through the middle of them with his head down and like fast walking. And they were like, "That's so weird. That's the same guy. Now he's not friendly." With us, we've had somebody walking a dog come out of nowhere. We were like off trail, down by a bunker. And she sees us and just starts coming towards us, and she's like, "Birding, huh?" She's like, "Are you birding?" We're like, "No." I'm like, "I'm looking for underground tunnels and bunkers," just to see what she said. But she came over and then she's like, "Our dog, yeah, we've had him for 6 months. I mean 6 weeks. I mean 6 days or something." It was really bizarre. And she kept touching her earpiece, and it was really bad acting if it was somebody, trying to. It was just a strange encounter. Like who does that in New York? People kind of mind their own business, and to have somebody, for the most part, other New Yorkers usually don't go and
People
ask
who want to
everybody
chase
questions.
you off the grounds. That's who does that crap.
True, true. So
One
we
thing
played.
interesting that happened to me where I encountered these kind of people, I guess you would kind of guess where like it's maybe like a little bit of a sort of similar story from growing up in Appleton is like there was this period of time, like I'd say 15, 16 years ago or something like that, where they were like there's these giant holes all over like downtown Appleton, and they'd like shut down like a lot of downtown, and they would cover the bottoms of them with water. But like I thought it was really weird because like if you looked up like a deep underground military base and then you saw like the entrances, it's like this cap, looks like a silver cap.
Oh,
And if you could see the bottom of the hole, you could see like the silver cap. Anyway, this one time I like me and my friend Rito like went up to like this guy who was one of the construction people, and we just thought the whole thing was bizarre because like there was a security team with the construction company, which was just never seen that before. And the whole thing just seemed weird to us. So we're like to this guy, and I think what's bizarre about these people is they just expect you to be like super duper mind controlled. So like they'll just say stuff to you and think you'll just be a zombie and not even register it, but then you do, and it weirds them out. And that's kind of what happened because I was like, what's up with these holes all over the place, man? Like, what are you guys doing? This is super weird. And the construction worker guy says to me, I swear to God, he says, "Oh, this is these holes. Oh, this is where we're gonna throw everybody where when the world ends. We're gonna put
whoa.
everything underground when the world ends or something like that." And I was like, "For real, man?" I was like, "Cause like I know about the deep underground military base that's underneath the city of Appleton. Like I'm well aware of it, and like a lot of people are like not like y'all aren't that slick." And he's just like, uh, uh I was kidding. It was a joke. I'm joking. You don't get it. You're funny. Jokes. You don't get jokes. You know what I mean? He's like, look, I'm busy working. Talk to him over there. It has to do with like plumbing or something. And like, I go and talk to this guy. It's like this, like, literally reminds me of the cigarette smoking man from fucking the X-Files. And he explains to me that like it has to do with there's an underground sewer system, and they're like doing something with the underground sewer system, even though the sewer system's above the former sewer system. And it's really weird because like all my friends live downtown, so that would suggest they'd probably have to like shut down the water for a little bit or something like that. Never did that. They never shut down the water. Nothing happened with the water. The whole thing was super odd. It was in the newspaper, and I remember, if I remember correctly, the guy's explanation to me was different than the explanation in the newspaper. They're slightly different, which I was like, what the fuck? Like, and like, yeah, just the guy's reaction. He's like, this is these the underground, we're gonna put them everybody there in the world then. I'm like, dude, I know about the underground base. Like, what are you talking about? Are you for real, bro? Like, you know what I mean? And the look on his face where he's just like, I wasn't talking about what I just said. It's just bizarre.
He
And
realized he wasn't supposed to say that when
yeah,
you
and he just kind of figured like I was just someone who just was genuinely just a little curious, was wondering, and I would just be like, huh, and like go on with my day. But no, I kind of did have the context that he didn't expect anybody to have. But no, there's been a lot of weird things. And another thing I can give you an example too is like not to hijack what you're saying, but to connect it all, Al Bielek talked about how they started branching out and they had underground tunnels connecting them and stuff like that. And they had underground facilities all over the country. And he talked about how they would start with a structure and then they'd build a hill over it and then put a fence around it. And that was what the water treatment facility in Appleton was like, which was right behind my house.
Yep.
And but he testified that the fact that it was like all over the country. And what like I've had people tell me about like there's like a path like that I guess you're not supposed to walk on really, like, and they changed it now, so there's no path there anymore. But I've had friends tell me that they walk by this path where there's this entrance underneath the bridge, and they were guys in black uniforms with like rifles.
Wow.
And like normally it's like there's like a door there, a gate, and it was like locked. And I'm not even sure if it's there anymore. I think they might have changed it, but this is like maybe 12 years ago or something like that. And he said like there was one time they walked past it and the doors were open, so they weren't locked, and there was military guys there in all black uniforms with rifles. Like, what's going on here?
Wow.
And so yeah, it became a global operation, and like yeah, like it was so weird finding like Al Bielek talking about like how they built on top of it, and then they built a hill, and then they built down from the hill, and like it all lines up, and like then there's like bridges that open up in Appleton where there's like I remember like there's this bridge that like never opens, but like one time was open and you could see because like it'd be for ships passing through, but they never do. But there's one time was open for whatever reason. I think they were doing construction, and you could see underneath it there was an entrance like to a plane, and you
Wow.
could hear construction work going on, and you could tell it was like deep, like far away.
Mhm.
Like so there's just like weird stuff going on, and basically like I guess
Like you could hear like jackhammering and pile
yeah,
driving.
yeah, like that kind of like stuff backing up, like large like things like beep,
Yeah, yeah.
when they back up, like whoa, like I could hear stuff like that, like construction going on, and it was around the time with the giant holes everywhere. It was around the same time as that. So like very weird stuff going on, and not to hijack from the Montauk story, but I'm basically trying to say is like it's all over the place, and what I'm talking about is connected to Montauk, and there's different energy centers that they use for different things, which I think maybe Appleton has one of them, and then also different towns that they put MK Ultra assets in to kind of monitor them and stuff like that, and group them together, and do certain manipulate them more easily and stuff like that. So this whole Montauk thing, like it started there and it really branched out. And they really started from the ground up, is what it is. It's like, because like they've testified to how like they started with the Tesla teleporters, where it's like you need another one on the other side to be able to go back, otherwise you could get stuck and stuff like that. And there's radiation problems. They worked their way up until they were opening up portals with mirrors and the like a trip chair, which was like alien technology, and like kids would open up like a portal using a mirror, and they would walk through it, and instead of it being like a portal where you'd like dematerialize and like show up on the next side, it was like literally like walking through a door. And they just like got more and more advanced, and more their control system got more and more insidious. And I think like like I said, what I was talking about before too, with like the smartphones and everything, like that's an example of it. Like you said, how they can control the nervous system. There's actually a patent for it that you can find online. It's in my book. Like the patent is actually written out in there, and like it's like with the images that they're showing you mixed with them being able to control your nervous system. So when you're online, it's before it was like more of like a one size fits all mind control where everybody's watching television. Now
Yeah.
you change it to a more catered mind
Yeah.
control for people, and they are able to control your nervous system. So make you sexually aroused, not sexually aroused, angry, excited, tired, happy, sad, etc. They're able to control your emotional state through your nervous system, while also kind of controlling what you're exposed to through the images and stuff like that that you're being exposed to on social media.
Yeah.
And so that's become a really highly sophisticated mind control system. And yeah, I really do think like when it comes down to this stuff, like I said, like the reason why it's so important what we're talking about here, and maybe like it's not the most popular subject now, but I feel like hopefully it will be. It's like, roads kind of lead back to Montauk in a lot of way with a lot of stuff. Like it really is like this whole mind control web, the secret spot, like time travel stuff, the secret space programs, like so
Yeah.
many of the things that people are talking about, Satanism, like all the stuff, it really leads back to Montauk and the
Yeah.
high consciousness and all the weird stuff that was occurring there, like and still is.
I gotta agree with you. Like on the how they fine-tuned everything and dialed in, they could dial in your exact response and even predict your thoughts now. And a lot of that, all roads lead back there, but it has grown far and wide. And like you said, even with like Aleister Crowley's favorite place was Montauk. He visited Montauk in 1918 after he fled New York City
Yeah, he was
as
a part of the Project Phoenix too. He was a part of it
yeah,
all.
OTO spy, and then they said he was sending spy messages through Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower. That's why the Navy blew it up. But the next year, the Navy built the Navy base in Montauk, where they eventually made the submarine base in Montauk. A lot of people don't even know that's there. They have a huge underground submarine base with pens and stuff back then. So it's extensive, and the original books, like I was thinking of when you were talking about the underground bases spreading across the country, were underground bases and tunnels. That's a really old one. And then like Rule by Secrecy, Jim Morris, and like Behold a Pale Horse. Some of these have early underground.
The horse classic, classic.
Yeah, some mentions of that whole preserving society after. And yeah, but they have the tunnel drilling machines, and and they also have patent for they call it a lunar tunnel drilling machine, but it's a nuclear tunnel, so it melts the slag instead of like digging with diamond drills and spitting the material out the back entrails. Instead, they melt it. They just fuse it with nuclear. I forget how it's not nuclear fusion. That wasn't discovered, but
can you even buy that book anymore? The one you just mentioned, the
the Behold the Pale Horse.
My brother's got a copy of
I
it.
got the original one with the whole roster in the back. The council, they have a roster. I don't know if they reprint it with that, but I think you could still get it. But it's pricey. It's like a collector too. I used to
My
loan this
brother
out.
has a copy of it, so fortunately I've been able to
Nice.
read a lot of it. I don't think I've made it through the whole thing, but
Yeah, it's a tough. It's also got a lot of documents, and those take time to read. Yeah. And that's part of the idea, like that gave me some of the inspiration, certain books to put documents in the first place. That was one of them. And the original Montauk Project book did have some documents, but some of David Hatcher Childress's early books had just so many documents. I really like that too.
Well, when you told me, one of the first bells that went off in my head was when you like, it made me whiplash. Like you and DHP were talking, and I was just kind of like, kind of like just around the, camp, just like doing, and like you had this document in your and you were like, yeah, and then here's a deed, that says like, if you own land in Montauk, you don't own the land underneath you, and you're not allowed to dig, and you're not allowed. And I was like, what? Like, what the hell are you talking? Like, what?
what? For real?
Yeah, I was like, what do you mean? Like if I want to dig a damn hole in my yard, like I'm gonna dig a hole in my yard. But like, that's something I had never like heard of, and it is common in some other states where like you own your house but you don't own your land, but like that's not a common thing here. So for it to be just a thing in Montauk sets off some alarms. Like,
Yeah,
you
they did. They also say in that the government can take back that property at any time in a time of war, no matter who owns it, like park systems included. And it's the county. It's what I did is get the deed from the county center that they wrote about in the Montauk project, but they didn't print it. So I bought a copy. I had them look up the number, and then I printed that in the book with the source. Sourcing them as the county and the number of the LIDAR number, LIBOR number. So it's like title search basically, and I just printed that because the legalese is there for people who want to study it, and I can't even understand the full like implications of it. Like they outline the whole property, with like crazy coordinates, which you could probably skip past the beginning. But what Mike said, there's some interesting stuff in there. If you read like the rules of the property, there was like at least 4 things that sounded off to me in there,
Yeah.
and that's one of them. You don't have mining rights, so
Yeah.
something down there that you can't disturb. It says pre-existing infrastructure in the document. One of the documents also, they talk about existing infrastructure down there. There's a lot of slip ups when it comes to the underground. Like there's a whole chapter about the underground in the book. And a lot of the stuff you were saying about your town matches up exactly with, the way construction projects are done and kept secure. So that
Well, there's always been a rumor, like, on the land, like, well, don't dig, like even as kids we're told, don't dig, don't dig anywhere because you'll hit water and you'll you'll flood you'll flood out the whole place. Like, so like we'd be like scared because, like, I mean, seriously, like if you dig a shovel down about a foot, water starts to come up, and like we were just like, oh shit, like, all right, like, but that was just something that popped in my head, and I figured I'd say it, but
Mike,
it's just interesting,
at a certain point, didn't the underground of Camp Hero get flooded with water? At what point
Oh,
did
yeah.
that happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what point it happened, but I know it happened. Yeah, like
yeah.
you can go ahead and say that it happened by natural rainwater, but I don't think that's the case. I think it was completely flooded because there's also parts where they've cemented it off and like
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like put in obscene amounts of cement and like
Yep. We did some experiments when we were there. We tied, we were making these glow rocks. Mike, we threw them down one of the tunnel, but in the radar, we threw down this part that I have pictures of the basement from the basement of the radar, a Sage radar tower identical to Montauk. It was being sold in real estate. Yeah.
I spoke to a friend, an elevator mechanic, and I said, "Do they put out do you guys do companies, do businesses, do anybody generally put cameras at the top of elevator shafts?" And they said he said absolutely not.
That's another thing we just found from an old video, camera on top of like Mike's saying, on the floor of the elevator. And then the real estate, they have a a Sage radar tower. There's only 12 of them, right? So they're selling one in Washington or Oregon. It's and they have the real estate walkthrough pictures on it. So they're down in the basement and they take a picture from below the springs from the basement up. And these are the same springs you see when you look down the elevator at Montauk and so forth. There's pictures of the whole basement. So we know there's a basement. So we went there, we put a glow stick on a rock and threw it down and it hits this cement level. Like somehow it's been filled to what degree, like how, not the whole bottom of the building, but maybe that's a lot of cement. And what you were saying about water is like, you think about it in like a biological lab when they scuttle protocol, when they burn the place out, when all is lost, they use fire, right? But in Montauk, everything was electronics, computers. So what they use? Water. The scuttle protocol was water. When all else fails and you got to destroy the place, they open the valves, and that's the end of all the tech. Well, most of the tech, besides crystals.
Well,
guess,
actually, Preston Nichols got a lot of that technology.
yes.
And I found out that there's like some guy, I actually talked to him, was in contact with him for a little bit, this guy Stormy or whatever, who was living with Preston, and I guess like he was like more or less squatting at Preston's place because Preston had died and he wasn't really paying the rent, and then the cop showed up and he had a bunch of the stuff from Montauk Preston did, like computers and all this different crazy shit that he like got from there before like they came in and did all that stuff. but the police came in and got it all basically. And now
Oh,
who knows who lives it, but
I didn't know that.
I think they wanted
But
to build something there. I think they wanted to actually get rid of the house. Probably pretty messed up. I heard that didn't keep the place in very good condition. But speaking of which, I know you briefly mentioned it earlier, but what was it like meeting like Preston Nichols, and didn't you meet Al Bielek as well? What was it like meeting those guys?
All four, yeah. So Peter Moon did most of the talking. He was the most, he was like a good organizer and presenter. Preston, as you know, went on like technical sidetracking all the time and details. And then he'd have some very realistic points and then have some very out there statements in the next sentence. So he was an enigma, and Peter Moon was like almost like the host because Al Bielek,
narrator. He was
yeah,
very. I could.
Al,
Yeah, he has like a narration as he goes about.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Put it all together, pretty much. And then the Duncan just stood there kind of smiling, against the wall. And Al Bielek was like the
Yeah, that
opposite.
guy's weird, isn't he?
Yeah, and then Al Bielek was on the other wall, kind of like with like a grunting kind of face, like, like he didn't look happy to be there, kind of. That's my impression. So yeah, the two of them were very quiet and totally different kind of moods. And then the audience was asking questions, but I could tell Preston was getting really annoyed with two ladies in the front who kept asking different versions of the same question and not letting him go. And then he was getting very flustered with that. So we kind of interrupted and brought some pictures up to show that the radar dish we were taking pictures of it in different directions back then and trying to see if this thing's like maybe turning overnight. Now you look at it and obviously it's torn to shreds, but back then we'd come, and one time there was a storm and it didn't move. We were there in a hurricane and it did not budge. And then other days where I don't remember any hurricanes obviously or hitting Long Island, I would know. We went there and the radar was in a different position, and we had met kids who lived in the base housing. They would run around there like the Lost Boys, and they knew the whole place. They even said their older brothers would go scuba diving in the sewer tunnels. And I got stories in the book from like town cops who were talking about certain tunnels that they had to invest, like to walk down to the ocean. It slants downward. It's a rectangular tunnel. I think that's a storm sewer tunnel that's made for a man to walk through. But there's other tunnels that have like phone lines from World War II. And those just serve as ventilation, a way for people to walk the whole length of the phone line in order they have to make a repair. It's like nailed on the wall, clamped on the wall, the wires.
I got to ask.
Yeah.
I gotta jump in there, Brian, because I remember you mentioning that, I think back on the adventure tour, how once the tunnels were flooded that you knew people who scuba dived down there.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's kind of crazy to me. Scuba diving in underground dark tunnels at Camp Hero where the Montauk Project took place. Any insight onto that?
Yeah, there's also I've heard other people even talk about how they would be part of the project and know where to scuba dive and find things. That was on something I read on the internet, an early internet, and these guys were trying to rescue their friends supposedly who were in the project and trapped. So this guy knew the scuba tunnels. This was a long time ago, but then there was a kid on YouTube that I just watching a random video exploring Camp Hero, and he's like showing these other kids who are exploring the tunnels, and he pops the sewer cap up and he's like, yeah, my brother goes in here. He's like, they go scuba diving all the time. So there's another verification, So I keep hearing this over and over from different people. One person who said he went in and he's going down the tunnel and it's getting deeper and deeper. And then he also feels his hand on the wall and feels machinery or thumping somewhere off in the distance. And that was very interesting to me. So I did mention that on the Dark Files, where we had some other locals in the bar there where we filmed an interview saying, yeah, but they don't know about the tunnels and the cliffs. And we were like, there is again that rumor about these tunnels and old caves in Montauk Point in the bluffs that kind of go under the lighthouse. There's a lot of rumors about these caves. And one time we actually did find an open cave. It was like a small little cave. Me and Daniel were walking and we saw it. It was like maybe 4 feet high. And I stuck my flashlight in and it looks like it went to curve to the left. And then we went back to show, actually we were out there in the summer, we went to show Peter Moon, and DHP was with us, and me and Danielle, and we went down there and we looked all over. It wasn't there. So they all climbed up the cliff, but I stayed down there and I realized I filmed it too, the before and the after. So I found the cave, but a big boulder was plopped right in the middle of the hole. It's like, I don't think it rolled down. I think it was just sealed up. like a boulder door. So now I know where it is. I mean, but I've heard that these things open and close before you can find them again, which is very interesting. And Prohibition, there's rumors that they were hiding booze in these things in the 20s too. And there's an extensive network of tunnels built by Carl Fisher, and the tunnels run through Camp Hero all the way to the tower at the Circle in Montauk. And there's some interesting stuff about that tower in there too. Other things that don't seem to tie together, but it's all on the webcam I'm watching one night, Montauk Main Street, and you can see that tower in the back, the Carl Fisher Tower, and the traffic circle. And all of a sudden this mist forms up out, and it looks like a giant, like a kind of like a demon face or something that has horns, teeth, eyes are slants, almost like reptilian eyes. And it just forms up out of the clouds, and it stays there for like 20 minutes. You fast forward through the footage, and then it dissipates. And I put that in the book. I printed it, and I took screenshots of me making a comment like, does anybody see this at 10:15? Nobody answered me because it's just like a webcam on the main street in Montauk. But yeah, I often check the lighthouse webcams. One time I saw a tall shadow figure standing on a rock. It was too tall to be a person, and the waves were hitting it, and it was just kind of rocking there for like a half hour.
You would never be able to get out there
without
getting demolished. You would get demolished trying to get to that rock.
Yeah.
You would get eaten alive. Like you knocked out, at least. At best.
Yeah.
At best. So I don't know whatever you saw out there, I don't know what it was, but
yeah, that's in there too. I printed the small,
I don't want to jump to junior conclusions, but it was something,
It was something. You're right. It was sizable. It was sturdy.
Now, when you talk about giant boulders covering cave doors and shit, that no, like junior pops in my head, like you know what I mean, like.
Yeah.
But, again, I can't. That's just.
Do you want to, I've talked about Junior on the channel before. Let's get a explanation from Brian Minnic on what your understanding of the Junior incident is and what Junior is.
Okay, yeah, basically like the last days of the project. Obviously, we know it was something to do with the end of, the abrupt ending of what they had going on there. Now, I think it's been described, of course, as a Sasquatch, but also some wolf features some people might see, but the size variation difference from huge to, just above average. But I believe that something happened where it could be an ancient creature, ancient cryptid, something from the Native American times, or even far back that we don't even know. Maybe it was a portal because it is a time control, time travel project and everything. Maybe a portal was opened and it came through from the past, far past. Or maybe it was materialized from thought, like they said, they planned it to say the time is now, and then create something a failsafe to destroy what they were working on. But I do believe that it's possible that they just tore a rip in time and space, and he came tumbling out. Whatever it is, Mike pointed out that if you look at the story, that it wasn't a detriment to us. I mean, Junior kind of shut down a project that was doing.
Can I testify to what I experienced during that time and what I remember happening? So I wasn't there, because I also worked in another time bubble for the guy. His name is Marduk, like the Sumerian god, like. He's like a Time Lord kind of guy, and I was actually working for him, and I'd get leased out by Montauk. It's complicated, but during that time, like apparently what happened, because I wasn't there, I came back to it, and everything had changed. And Preston, of course, tells the story to make himself kind of look like a hero, and so I want to set the record straight here that like the story that he tells isn't really how it went. There was a kid who was being programmed, and he was being thrown in the trip chair and told to like do something, probably open a portal, I'm guessing. Again, I wasn't there. I'm realizing this from other people that I was there with, that were there, that I trust, because I was there with them and we shared the same memories. And basically they said that like this kid was really powerful and intelligent enough to know basically like, okay, like the trip chair, they called the trip chair, and this piece of alien technology that they used for opening wormholes and things like that, and they would use that to turn the mirror into a gateway to other realities or times or stuff like that. Um, but this kid, this individual, he imagined a monster like that wanted to kill like the controllers of the project, meaning Preston, Al Bielek, people like that, because well, at the end of the day, they're pretty abusive. They're kind of psychopaths, hurting, they're hurting the kids and stuff, and the whole thing, like being there, like it was a really traumatic experience. They fed us dog food and stuff like that, kept us in cages and stuff. It was not a good time. And yeah, so you imagine like a monster that wanted to like kill him, kill the people who were part of the project that, and apparently it worked, and like this thing went around the base, and because it was like made by the trip chair and it was like a thought form, like that's why people will see it in different like some people saw a Sasquatch, some people saw a wolf thing, some people saw maybe something totally different, and some people said it was this big or that big. It was because it was this thought form, and it was really just like it just all the main thing, it just went into your mind and saw what you feared, and then kind of created that. It created what you feared. And yeah, it did kill a lot of people and stuff. And the project did not end though. The project, there's certain people who just got booted out of the project, meaning Preston, Al Bielek, um, uh, uh, John, or excuse me, Jack Pruitt, got booted out and was no longer. And then so for a while, so it was like these people who were running the operation, like Preston and stuff like that, they treated us like guinea pigs, and they didn't treat us like human beings, and we were mind control slaves. But we kind of, eventually figured out what was going on, and it was a mutiny, is what it was. Took advantage of that. The people who were at the base took advantage of that situation to use it as a mutiny, and they took over the base. And so then when I came back after that, after the junior incident, because I did come back and everything was way different and everything was like trashed. I remember there being like blood everywhere and stuff. And basically, I had a conversation with an individual by the name of Joseph Powell in the Here and Now, but we called him Jimmy. It was his alter, and he basically explained to me like, I'm the commander of Montauk now, like things are different. And so for a while it was like Project Phoenix 2 continued, but like we were changing things to like undo stuff Preston did and stuff like that, like it was different. But eventually, basically the military and like this group of reptilians, this Draco, they came in and took over the base again and kicked us out. And it's a whole crazy situation, really long story, but that's paraphrasing it as best as I can. And so yeah, apparently, and again, I wasn't there, but according to people who I really do trust, and multiple sources of people who were there that I trust, they say it was like a very like a real thought form. Like this is a creature, kind of like birthed a real like a creature that exists, and it's kind of like more like a thought form. But yeah, it could have maybe decided its own form now and actually looks a certain way and doesn't appear the same way. Maybe it appears as
makes
people now. But yeah, that's apparently what happened. So, and I know it sounds very wild, like esoteric and crazy and out there, but it's the Montauk Project, people. That's what we're talking about. The whole thing is pretty wild and crazy. So,
My
yes.
download was very recent. It was 2 years ago, and it was like a direct download from Junior, almost like, and I call it a drive-by because it wasn't really communication, more so than he just had something to say, and it was like, um, like the word monster is like how I'm perceived, but really I did, like the humans there were monsters, and
Yeah.
I did some cleansing.
Yep, that's exactly what he did. I remember, so I can actually say something too that I remember, which is when I came back, if it's all really blurry, but I feel like I remember the junior thing being there, and when I saw it, it looked like this. I can't even describe what it looked like. It's pretty much impossible, but it did go into my mind, and it was like it wanted to hurt me, it wanted to kill me. It was like trying to bring out like fear, but then it saw that I was a victim and that I didn't want to be there, and then it just like went out of my mind and like let me go. And so I really do believe in this, like what other people say, where this thing went in your mind and all that stuff, because Like I feel like I experienced that. Like when I got there before I ran into Joseph Powell and stuff like that. Like I remember there being blood everywhere, bodies and stuff. And I feel like I ran into it and I feel like it wanted to kill me. But then it went into my mind was like, oh, you got kidnapped and you don't want to be here and you're kind of like me. Like I don't want to be here either. I don't want to have to do any of this either. And so just let me go. And so I think that is a big, and that would explain. I mean, that would explain why like didn't kill everybody. Like all and you know, you can find an interview. Have you ever watched the Channel 3X interviews with Preston Nichols and stuff like that? Have you ever found that channel, Brian?
I must have seen that. Yeah, if you describe the actual interview, I probably just forgot the name of the channel, but I do.
There's one where it's where it's Larry James and Al Bielek being interviewed by I'm not sure. It's called Remembering and Knowing.
Okay, I think I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It,
and Larry James, I mean, if you listen to the mini interview, it's really fucked up. Like they're talking about like kidnapping kids and losing them in time tunnels and get them getting killed, and they're like laughing and stuff, like literally snickering about it. And like when like the interviewer asked them, like, was this hard for you guys to like do this to all these kids? They're like, oh no, they're like homeless kids and stuff, so they didn't really matter. And like it's just really like hard actually to listen to these guys talk about what they did so casually, like the like how like they hurt these kids and did all this. They treated us as guinea pigs, and I don't think it's that far off or that crazy. Like if you really think about how it all went down and what we were like, they were pushing us to the limits of our psionic abilities and turning us into weapons and stuff and trying to use mind control to control us. But without the mind control system, if we saw through it, then yeah, a mutiny is kind of what would happen, right? Like I feel like it kind of backfired on them, the whole thing. So I don't know. That's what I really think happened with the whole Junior incident. That's like
yeah,
our
people
side of the
assume
story, which I guess like I would say my side of the story was really our side of the story. People like Joseph Paul, John Whitberg, and I know there's others. I'm pretty sure Matt Tracy recounts it as being that as well, and a bunch of other people, Christy Campbell. I'm pretty sure they all say the same thing, like about that's what happened with Junior. Like we all agree and remember the same thing happening. So for
Uh,
people wondering, I guess that is a huge part of the story, and I just figured I'd throw in my perspective on that and add to the testimony
that's
of
awesome.
that was already out there put out by Preston. Which have you've heard? I'm sure you've heard the stuff about like Preston, how he abused the kids and stuff like that, right? Like he talked about it in his books, and then I'm wondering too if you also, and forgive me if it's in your book, I haven't read the whole thing, but the stuff like the you know the Y files when they talked about the Montauk project, because which he was pretty skeptical about it, you know, and one of
Yeah.
the reasons why is he brought up Preston, and he
Yes.
brought up how he would
He
lure.
named me as a Montauk, experiencer, basically a victim along in the same group with Preston, but that was an accident, I believe, of
Wasn't
writing and reading.
wasn't his like justification that he had to do some of those like dirty things to undo
Oh,
like
the deprogramming? Yeah, that's
yeah, like that was like
Yeah. Like I know this guy, and I won't name his name because he's not really public, and he's like, you know, got a job where people think it's weird if he does, you know, if he was public. But he was telling me how like he would go and hang out with Preston Nichols because he's from like, you know, the area, New York area, Long Island, and he'd go to these things, and he said that Preston Nichols like always gave him the creeps, and kind of Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron too, but he was Montauk, so he knew something weird was going on. He was gravitated to his weirdest events. But Preston basically talked about like like circle jerks and all this weird shit. He said he had to like stop going to his like events, and yeah, there's the thing that they talk about in the Y Files episode, which and then also like Joseph Powell talked about in an interview about how he found an old message board where it was people from Long Island that also remember like going like they talked about like going to Preston to go get help, Montauk people. It was like a message board he found like Montauk people. And yeah, they a lot of them talk about the same thing. Like he'd turn on his machine and then they'd like black out and then they like wake up like with their like their pants around their ankles or something like that. And
mhm.
yeah, yeah, and so and yeah, like so one of the things that I always like try to highlight is like just because the guy was not a good person, was a monster, doesn't necessarily mean all of us. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. He obviously didn't want to make himself look too bad in his testimony, but or make it too blatant. But he did literally say in his interviews that he sodomized and did bad things, and he was out front about it, and so for the Y-Files guy though to totally write that off and say, well, then nothing he said is true. Well, he's got to start making the satanic Michael Aquino connection to the Montauk thing. He's got to start
I have
looking at
that
the
in there.
picture. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, like there's the huge connection to the
I think
whole.
Stranger Things, you're right, because that's like how they go to the West Coast in Stranger Things and Russia. Those are both a part of the story, like it to reference the Michael Aquino, which was done in a 16-inch gun bunker, the same as at Montauk Battery 113 or Junior's bunker as they call it, Battery 112. That's the same identical bunker at the Presidio in San Francisco that Michael Aquino did that in 1984. Similar, it was like the psychosexual mind monarch programming, and he actually was brought to trial for that, and he got let go. He actually sued the city of San Francisco for millions of dollars, and he was transferred out of state with a raise after that, after he went to court for it. He was the head of the
Yeah, which I hear,
church.
I hear the judge was a Satanist, and it was, I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind
he
of
had
how
his
it all
own
works. If you look
chapter.
into it, the conspiracy of silence, like if you watch that documentary, which is on YouTube now, and it was going to go on TV, but it got taken off TV before it could air. It just highlights that basically everybody involved with that case got shut down. People got killed. People's families got killed. Um,
That's yeah.
and the one, what's her name? Bad with names, but Elisa Owen, I think it is, or Lisa Owens, one of those. She got it. So she was one of the people who came out about all the stuff she experienced, and she got charged with perjury and sat in jail for 4 years, which is longer than Larry
Wow.
King, who was the guy who was a part of it, who was like abusing kids and stuff, who never got prosecuted for it. And the only reason that he got prosecuted was for bank fraud with the Franklin Credit Union, which was connected to the scandal and which was what was funding all of this, like flying these kids out to DC and all these different places, and they're talking about the same places, and they're corroborating on the story. And the thing that's really fucked up about it is and I talk about this in my book too, is like the fact that like the reason why it's fact that the detectives were like, man, that's pretty crazy. These kids are all corroborating, talking about the same stories, talking about the same things. But they're talking about being defecated on, being peed on, being forced to drink blood. That's just too wild. That couldn't happen. No, the world's too sunshine and rainbows and good and pure for anything that evil to actually happen. These kids are crazy. That's like literally the explanation if you look into it. That's not conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat. That's literally what the detectives say. They're like, yeah, they're saying the same places, the same people. They literally took us to the same addresses and stuff, but
They didn't see Usual Suspects. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing mankind he didn't exist. At the end of the detectives missed that too. In the end of that movie, that's a good quote anyway.
yeah,
That
and it
goes
was just
along
like
with what
they're
you're
just
saying.
like yeah, that's all the satanic stuff, and this guy's like the politician that's like involved with like a church, like Boys Town, like come on. And it's like, no, dude, it's all like I that and it goes to I think it kind of comes kind of like connects to a little bit with like what I'm talking about, my testimony like, and what I talk about is pretty insane stuff. I mean, I talk about being a time traveler, I talk about going to the future, I talk about all these crazy things. And I guess that's kind of like their insurance policy, isn't it? Is everybody thinks that that's all too crazy. Like even these kids that are coming out about some pretty like they're not really talking about like time travel or anything like that, but obviously it's pretty insane what they're talking about. But it was all just perverts, more or less, right? Like people couldn't even wrap their minds around that, and that really needs to get thrown out the window. Like there needs to be a kind of like a cultural mental revolution around our ability to be able to perceive reality. Like it's kind of like when you said earlier, Mike, I don't know if it was before the like official when we were recording or not, but out of sight, out of mind. I think like with the satanic stuff and a lot of these really evil things, like people are out of sight, out of mind. Like even when these wars happen, like that you could name any one, it doesn't really matter. Everybody always thinks it's a tragedy and they hate it, and nobody thinks war is good. Everybody agrees it's really bad, but when it's out of sight, out of mind, it's easier for you to like not stand up and do something about it and go on with your day. And it's like that with all this stuff. It's like, probably a big reason why they put it all underground and hide it and keep it secret is because they're like, okay, well, as long as like if people know what's happening, that's fine as long as they question it just enough to where we can still get away.
Well, it's the way things go in general, right? If it doesn't directly affect people, they just don't really care about it. And that comes down to like disease, right? Like, I mean, you could say like, let's just say like I don't know, cancer, for instance, right? Like people don't really want to contribute to it or care about it or whatever, or famine or autism or whatever the case may be, but until it directly affects you, right? When it hits your family or it hits you or whatever, now like people start to care about it and pay attention to it. So it's even stuff that's like in our face. So yeah, absolutely. Like out of sight, out of mind is like if you could put something underground or completely, brainwash people or look at the birdie, right? Like when like for instance, like when I'll just tell you right now, like when that barge hit that bridge, remember that a few months ago?
Yeah.
I started looking at everything else. I was like, what else is going on? Something else is happening, right? Because I saw the birdie happen, it's like boom over here. And I'm like, something's up, some grimy shit's going on somewhere else. But that's the way my mind works, is I'm like, if they're making you look here, like I'm looking somewhere
Yeah, it's like
else.
look in this hand, not this hand, that kind of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
It's back to that chess
right.
game. Back
Yeah.
to your chess game again. It's like drinking, they do like problem, reaction, solution. So they make a problem to get a certain reaction to get a desired outcome. It's like 3 steps ahead that they plan these things some of the time. So you really got to look, at the final outcome and where it started and the pieces in between. But it is like chess, like you started, this conversation with, like the chess game of life, the chess game of control, of all of us, or everything that is power, intelligence, information, but the things that they can't control, it's like your happiness, your hope, your creativity, all that stuff.
Well, they try their best to manipulate that. And one thing that, I had a really fascinating conversation with this guy, Dan Winters, who's like living in France and stuff like that. And he was talking about how his whole perspective from Montauk was really fascinating. I was really unfamiliar with him, and I met him and talked with him on a show, and he was talking about how the Montauk kids and a lot, people in general, but what they try to do is they try to take your bliss from you. So like they try to make us miserable, and that's why a lot of us come from like really bad broken homes, and like just like they make it so like we don't have our own power within ourselves. Because if you can take your bliss from people, like meaning like just like contentness, I guess, right? It makes them really easy to control. Like if you don't feel whole within yourself, then you can't it's like when your cup is empty, you can't pour into other things, right? Like you have to have a full cup in order to be able to pour into the world, into anything else. And so what they try to do is kind of like give us an empty cup, like make us like not have like emotional energy. But
Sure, that's how most of these cults find people too, right? Like they find them when they're, at their lowest points or whatever, or like let's just say for me, like the army. Like I joined the army because I was at a low point. Like I had tried other things, or I was in addiction still. Like I couldn't find other ways out, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And that was how the recruiter baited me. He was like, well, what else do you have going on? And I scratched my head and couldn't think of anything. And I'm like, well, shit, I've tried everything. And you know what I mean? And that was as simple as it was. And next thing you know, I'm in the Green Gang. You know what I mean? The biggest cult in the world, right? Like, and like what? It was just that simple. You know what I mean? Like, and then but I knew better than to put both feet in. You know what I mean? I always had one foot in and one foot out, and was like, you know, I always toggled that line and stayed true to myself. I never went full like, you know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, like Scientology, or you see this new thing, Dancing with the Devil, on Netflix, and like people are talking about it, like, oh my God, do you see these 7M dancers? And I'm like, what do you think? That's the only place? I'm like, you think that's it? Just this one guy? You know? Oh, P. Diddy, blah, blah. You think it's just him? Like,
Right.
like
Right.
it's everywhere, everywhere. You know, and that's why, you know, yeah, I don't know. You get my drift. I don't have to go into
Well,
detail.
I totally do it. And we're working at about 2 hours here, I think,
Oh
guys.
wow.
Yeah, which is good. I'm really glad. But I think we kind of covered a lot of ground here. And I really hope that this kind of generates some interest for your book and helps you sell some copies.
Thank
Again,
you.
it's available on bookbaby.com, and make sure there's the Kindle copy, which you can get, which is great because you instantly get it, which I really liked, and I'm reading it that way now. But also physical copies for people who want to have a physical copy, because I also like that and understand that. And yeah, there's a whole lot of information that we discussed uh, in the book that you can learn more about, and then there's like so much in there that we haven't even touched yet. It's pretty deep. There's a lot in there. We'd have to talk for probably 6 hours to really even just kind of really summarize what's all in there. But that's kind of the great part about the book, is it's a bit of a Montauk handbook, a lot of evidence in there. And I honestly think, like, if you're gonna be on a bender buying Montauk books, you might as well buy my book too. While you're
Absolutely.
at it, I think they make a good complementary books to each other. Like, real talk, like
That's right.
not
Yeah.
just shameless self promotion, but I
I
really
literally
think that they make good complementing books together. Like if you're reading about Montauk. And then yeah, just like also another thing too that's cool about the book that I really like is you lay out a lot of different other authors and Montauk researchers, and you even list books that you think people should check out and stuff like that. So if you consider yourself like a Montauk researcher, someone looking into this subject, trying to learn about it as much about it as possible, this book is literally like necessary for you. You gotta have it. It's a must have. So thank you again so much, Brian, for coming on the show. Brian Minnic of Montauk is Strange. I'm gonna link his channel, Montauk Strange is Strange, in the description, and of course also his book, so you can get that. And then we got Mike. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Mike, as well. He's Long Island Bigfoot. You got your own YouTube channel and all that stuff as well. I'll make sure to link that in the description of the video as well. One of these days we gotta have you just come on the show and talk about what you're doing too, Mike. The first time he came on, what a good guy this guy is. He comes on on the show for the first time to plug his friend instead of talk about his own stuff. I really
Oh, it's the
appreciate it
first
though, because
time. Whoa, thanks, man.
yeah, you gave your own perspective too, which was great because you're from the area and you guys kind of have really seen a lot of this together. So I really gave an all-encompassing thing and really added a lot to it. So really, really appreciate you guys being here. And yeah, thanks again for coming on. And everybody, make sure to check out these books. I might even actually have a link for my book in the description, actually, because I'm getting the test copy today. So I
Ooh,
might have
nice.
yeah. So there's lots of links in the description, lots of links for you people to check out. Yeah. Also, of course, it goes without saying, there's an ad in the beginning of the video, but just reminding people, the 15th to the 18th, Serrata Resort, St. Petersburg, which another link, too many links. We're the full disclosure movement.org, and we're really excited to be going to be joining a bunch of different people there. We have so many different speakers. Check out the website, check all the information is listed there. And yeah, that's coming up soon, but tickets are still available. It's not too late to come check it out and join us. And other live stream passes as well, Brian.
Yeah, they're only $55 for 4 days and nights of presentations on the main stage, and then featurettes with our live stream dream team, which I believe Bigfoot Mike here might be participating in.
I'm open. Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
matter of
So
getting.
how cool is that, you guys? You can hang out in your pajamas or in your underwear and
Yeah.
watch the whole conference for $55, no matter where you're at. And then also that money helps support this event, which, as you guys know, physical events like this, they cost a lot of money. They're hard to pull off. They're a lot of hard work. And every single contribution that people can make, every single warm body showing up that paid for a ticket, everything else, you're all important. Even if you're just somebody who's like on the fence, who doesn't understand this, who feels like, like you're too new to it or something like that.
Well,
Nobody's too new to
I
it.
can speak as somebody who was that. I didn't know anything about anything coming in, meeting you guys, whatever. And I met you guys and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about you, like about the secret space program, just so many different things, and how many people are affected and in this and involved, and there's so much to learn out there, and there really is. And I believe this conference is going to be just like
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty mind-blowing event. I mean, there's going to be a lot to learn. There's, at least
location too.
10%. There's, I mean, some of them I'm not familiar with, but like some of the people that I respect the most, they're going to be speaking at the conference. People I really look up to. So, and
It's,
then a lot of the people who I don't know are like people I'm sure I'll end up looking up to, because I hear a lot of great things about a lot of these people. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm not just saying that. Like, I've heard a lot of really great things about a lot of these presenters and stuff like that I'm fortunately going to be able to meet in person and stuff like that. And that's what a lot of this is about too, is us just getting together in person, and these physical events in person. And like it's a pretty cool thing to have all these online spaces and be able to do these Zoom interviews and stuff like that. And this virtual thing we got going on where we're all able to meet and get all this work done with all being in different places. But physically meeting in the same place and getting together, it's really important. It's an educational opportunity. It's a time for networking and stuff like that, and also for being somewhere around people who are like-minded, and you don't have to feel uncomfortable. And there's also the aspect of like, look, we're talking about dark stuff and things like that, but what we're really talking about is building a better reality, a brighter future, new earth, and it's going to be a great time. That's really what it's about. Is we're going to have a great time. We're going to learn a lot. So it's an educational opportunity, but also it's just a chance for us to get together on the beach in Florida and let loose. And it's going to be perfect. So I really look forward to seeing everybody come out there that's going to be coming out. And I don't, Mike's going to be there. I don't know if Brian's going to be there, but like we're all going to be there otherwise. And it's going to, yeah. Well, just it's not too late to come out, guys. Like, come out to the event. And yeah, thanks everybody for coming on the show and talking and stuff like that. I'm gonna end the recording now, and yeah, thanks so much for everybody for tuning in.
Thank you so much.
Much love,
I appreciate
everyone.
you, man.
Have a good one.